Book of Job. As with other books of the Bible, Job bears the name of the narrative's primary character. This name might have been derived from the Hebrew word for persecution, thus meaning persecuted one, or from an Arabic word meaning repent, thus bearing the name repentant one. The author recounts an era in the life of Job in which he was tested and the character of God was revealed. New Testament writers directly quote Job 2 times, Romans 11:35 and 1 Corinthians 3:19, plus Ezekiel 14:14, 20, and James 5:11 show Job was a real person. The book does not name its author. Job is an unlikely candidate because the book's message rests on Job's ignorance of the events that occurred in heaven as they related to his ordeal. One Talmudic tradition suggests Moses as an author, since the land of Uz was adjacent to Midian, where Moses lived for 40 years, and he could have obtained a record of the story there. Solomon is also a good possibility due to the similarity of content with parts of the book of Ecclesiastes, as well as the fact that Solomon wrote the other wisdom books, except for Psalms. Though he lived long after Job, Solomon could have written about the events that occurred long before his own time, in much the same manner as Moses was inspired to write about Adam and Eve. Elihu, Isaiah, Hezekiah, Jeremiah, and Ezra have also been suggested as possible authors, but without support. The date of the book's writing may be much later than the events recorded therein. This conclusion is based on Job's age, his lifespan of nearly 200 years, which fits the patriarchal period, the social unit being the patriarchal family. The Chaldeans who murdered Job's servants were nomads, and they had not yet become city dwellers. Job's wealth being measured in livestock rather than gold and silver. Job's priestly functions within his family. A basic silence on matters such as the covenant of Abraham, Israel, Exodus, and the law of Moses. The events of Job's Odyssey appear to be patriarchal. Job, on the other hand, seemed to know about Adam and the Noahic flood. These cultural, historical features found in the book appear to place the events chronologically at a time after Babel, but before or contemporaneous with Abraham. The book begins with a scene in heaven that explains everything to the reader. Job was suffering because God was contesting with Satan. Job never knew that, nor did any of his friends, so they all struggled to explain suffering from the perspective of their ignorance, until finally Job rested in nothing but faith in God's goodness and the hope of his redemption, that God vindicated his trust in his culminating message of the book. When there are no rational or even theological explanations for disaster and pain, trust God. The occasion and events that follow Job's sufferings present significant questions for the faith of believers in all ages. Why does Job serve God? Job is heralded for his righteousness, being compared with Noah and Daniel, and for his spiritual endurance. Several other questions are alluded to throughout Job's ordeal. For instance, why do the righteous suffer? Though an answer to that question may seem important, the book does not set forth such an answer. Job never knew the reasons for his suffering, and neither did his friends. The righteous sufferer does not appear to learn about any of the heavenly court debates between God and Satan that precipitated his pain. In fact, when finally confronted by the Lord of the universe, Job put his hand over his mouth and said nothing. Job's silent response in no way trivialized the intense pain and loss he had endured. It merely underscored the importance of trusting God's purposes in the midst of suffering, because suffering, like all other human experiences, is directed by perfect divine wisdom. In the end, the lesson learned was that one may never know the specific reason for his suffering, but one must trust in the sovereign God. That is the real answer to suffering. The book treats two major themes and many other minor ones, both in the narrative framework of the prologue and epilogue, and in the poetic account of Job's torment that lies in between. The key to understanding the first theme of the book is to notice the debate between God and Satan, and in heaven, and how it connects with the 3 cycles of earthly debates between Job and his friends. God wanted to prove the character of believers to Satan and to all demons, angels, and people. The accusations are by Satan, who indicted God's claims of Job's righteousness as being untested, if not questionable. Satan accused the righteous of being faithful to God only for what they could get. Since Job did not serve God with pure motives, according to Satan, the whole relationship between him and God was a sham. Satan's confidence that he could turn Job against God came, no doubt, from the fact that he had led the holy angels to rebel with him. Satan thought he could destroy Job's faith in God by inflicting suffering on him, thus showing in principle that the saving faith could be shattered. God released Satan to make his point if he could, but he failed. A true faith in God proved unbreakable. Even Job's wife told him to curse God, but he refused. His faith in God never failed. Satan tried to do the same to Peter and was unsuccessful in destroying Peter's faith. When Satan has unleashed all that he can do to destroy saving faith, it stands firm. In the end, God proved his point with Satan, that saving faith can't be destroyed, no matter how much trouble a saint suffers, or how incomprehensible and undeserved it seems. A second and related theme concerns proving the character of God to men. Does this sort of ordeal in which God and his opponent Satan square off with righteous Job as the test case suggest that God is lacking in compassion and mercy toward Job? Not at all, as James says. You have heard of the perseverance of Job, and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord is full of compassion and merciful. It was to prove that the very opposite. Job says, "Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept calamity?" God's servant does not deny that he has suffered. He does deny that his suffering is a result of sin, nor does he understand why he suffers. Job simply commits his ordeal with a devout heart of worship and humility to a sovereign and perfectly wise Creator, and that was what God wanted him to learn in this conflict with Satan. In the end, God flooded Job with more blessings than he had ever known. The major reality of the book is the inscrutable mystery of innocent suffering. God ordains that his children walk in sorrow and pain, sometimes because of sin, sometimes for chastening, sometimes for strengthening, and sometimes to give opportunity to reveal his comfort and grace. But there are times when the compelling issue in the suffering of all the saints is unknowable, because it's for a heavenly purpose that those on earth can't discern. Job and his friends wanted to analyze the suffering and look for causes and solutions. Using all of their sound theology and insight into the situation, they searched for answers, but found only useless and wrong ideas, for which God rebuked them in the end. They couldn't know why Job suffered, because what had happened in heaven between God and Satan was unknown to them. They thought they knew all the answers, but they only intensified the dilemma by their insistent ignorance. By spreading out some of the elements of this great theme, we can see the following truths in Job's experience. 1. There are matters going on in heaven with God that believers know nothing about, yet they affect their lives. 2. Even the best effort at explaining the issues of life can be useless. 3. God's people do suffer. Bad things happen all the time to good people, so one cannot judge a person's spirituality by his painful circumstances or successes. 4. Even though God seems far away, perseverance and faith is a most notable virtue, since God is good, and one can safely leave life in his hands. 5. The believer in the midst of suffering should not abandon God, but draw near to him, so out of the fellowship can come the comfort, without the explanation. And 6. Suffering may be intense, but it will ultimately end for the righteous, and God will bless abundantly. The most critical interpretive challenges involve the book's primary message. Although often thought to be the pressing issue of the book, the question of why Job suffers is never revealed to Job. Though the reader knows that it involves God's proving a point to Satan, a matter which completely transcends Job's ability to understand, James' commentary on Job's case draws the conclusion that it was to show God's compassion and mercy, but without apology it offers no explanation for Job's specific ordeal. Readers find themselves putting their proverbial hands over their mouths, with no right to question or accuse the all-wise and all-powerful Creator, who will do as he pleases, and in so doing both proves his points in the spiritual realm to angels and demons, and defines his compassion and mercy. Engaging in theodicy, i.e., man's attempt to defend God's involvement in calamity and suffering, is shown to be appropriate in these circumstances, though in the end it is apparent that God does not need or want human advocate. The book of Job poignantly illustrates the secret things belong to Yahweh, our God. The nature of Job's guilt and innocence raises perplexing questions. God declared Job perfect, upright, God-fearing, and shunning evil, but Job's comforters raised a critical question based on Job's ordeal. Had not Job sinned? On several occasions, Job readily admitted to having sinned, but Job questioned the extent of his sin as compared to the severity of his sufferings. God rebuked Job, in the end, for his demands to be vindicated on the comforter's accusations. But he also declared that what Job said was correct, and that what the comforters said was wrong. Another challenge comes in keeping separate pre-understandings that Job and his comforters brought to Job's ordeal. At the outset, all agreed that God punishes evil, rewards obedience, and no exceptions are possible. Job, due to his suffering, innocently was forced to conclude that the exceptions are possible, and that the righteous also suffer. He also observed that the wicked prosper. These are more than small exceptions to the rule, thus forcing Job to rethink his simple understanding about God's sovereign interaction with his people. The type of wisdom Job comes to embrace was not dependent merely on the promise of reward or punishment. The long, peevish disputes between Job and his accusers were attempts to reconcile the perceived iniquities of God's retribution in Job's experiences. Such an empirical method is dangerous. In the end, God offered no explanation to Job, but rather called all parties to a deeper level of trust in the Creator, who rules over a sin-confused world with power and authority directed by perfect wisdom and mercy. Understanding this book requires understanding of the nature of wisdom, particularly the difference between man's wisdom and God's, and admitting that Job and his friends lacked the divine wisdom to interpret Job's circumstances accurately. Those friends kept trying, while Job learned to be content in God's sovereignty and mercy. The turning point or resolution for this matter is found in Job 28, where the character of divine wisdom is explained. Divine wisdom is rare and priceless. Man cannot hope to purchase it, and God possesses it all. We may not know what is going on in heaven or what God's purposes are, but we must trust Him. Because of this, the matter of believers' suffering takes a back seat to the matter of divine wisdom. Job was greatest of the sons of the east. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless, upright, fearing God, and turning away from evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. His possessions also were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 pairs of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and very many servants. And that man was the greatest of all the sons of the east. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one on his day, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Now it happened, when the days of feasting had completed their cycle, that Job would send and set them apart as holy. And he would rise up early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "Perhaps my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did continually. All Job has is in Satan's hand. Now it was the day that the sons of God came to stand before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them. And Yahweh said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, "From roaming about on earth and walking around on it." Then Yahweh said to Satan, "Have you set your heart upon my servant Job? For there is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. And Satan answered Yahweh and said, Does Job fear God without cause? Have you not made a hedge about him and his house and all that he has on every side? Have you blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land? But send forth your hand now, and touch all that he has. He will surely curse you to your face. And Yahweh said to Satan, Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only do not send forth your hand toward him. So Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh. Messengers speak of the fire of God. Now it happened that on that day, when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the house of their brother, the firstborn, a messenger came to Job and said, The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them. They also struck down the young men with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While this one was still speaking, another also came and said, The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the young men and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While this one was speaking, another also came and said, The Chaldeans set up 3 companies and made a raid on the camels and took them and struck down the young men with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While this one was still speaking, another also came and said, Your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in the house of their brother, the firstborn. And behold, a great wind came from across the wilderness and touched the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they died, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped, and he said, Naked I come from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh has taken away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. Through all this, Job did not sin, nor did he give offense to God. Satan strikes Job's flesh. Again, it was the day that the sons of God came to stand before Yahweh, and Satan also came among them to stand himself before Yahweh. And Yahweh said to Satan, Where do you come from? Then Satan answered Yahweh and said, From roaming about on the earth and walking around on it. And Yahweh said to Satan, Have you set your heart upon my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil, and he still holds fast his integrity. So you incited me against him to swallow him up in vain. Satan answered Yahweh and said, Skin for skin, yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. However, send forth your hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh. He will curse you to your face. So Yahweh said to Satan, Behold, he is in your hand, only spare his life. Then Satan went out from the presence of Yahweh, and struck Job with terrible boils from the sole of his foot to the top of his head, and he took a potsherd to scrape himself, while he was sitting amongst the ashes. Then his wife said to him, Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, You speak as one of the wickedly foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept calamity? In all this Job did not sin with his lips. Job's 3 friends. Then Job's 3 friends heard all of the calamity that had come upon him. So they came, each one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. And they made an appointment together to come console him and comfort him. Then they lifted up their eyes at a distance and did not recognize him, and they lifted up their voices and wept, and each of them tore his robe, and they threw dust over their heads toward the sky. Then they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, with no one speaking a word to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. Job curses the day of his birth. Afterward Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. And Job answered and said, Let the day perish on which I was born, and the night which said, A man is conceived. May the day be darkness. Let not God seek it from above, nor light shine on it. Let darkness and shadow of death redeem it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let thick darkness take it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful shout enter it. Let those curse it who curse the day, who are ready to rouse Leviathan. Let the stars of its twilight be darkened. Let it hope for the light, but have none, and let it not see the breaking dawn, because it did not shut the opening of my mother's body, or hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die from the womb, come forth from the womb, and breathe my last? Why did the knees receive me? And why did the breast that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept, then it would have been rest to me, with the kings and with counselors of the earth, who rebuilt waste places for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who were filling their house with silver. Or why was I not like a miscarriage hidden away, as infants that never saw light? There the wicked cease from raging, and the weary of strength are at rest. The prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Why is light given to him who is troubled, and life to the bitter of the soul, who long for death, but there is none, and dig for it more than hidden treasures, who are glad with joy and rejoice when they find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God has hedged in? For my groaning comes at the sight of my food, and my roaring pours out like water. For the dread that I dread comes upon me, and what I am afraid of befalls me. I am not complacent, nor am I quiet, and I am not at rest, and raging comes. Eliphaz says, the innocent do not suffer. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, if one tries a word with you, will you become weary? But who can hold back from speaking? Behold, have you discipled many, and have you strengthened limp hands? Your words have helped the stumbling to stand, and you have encouraged feeble knees. But now it has come to you, and you are impatient. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Remember now whoever perished being innocent, or where was the upright wiped out? According to what I have seen, those who plow wickedness and those who sow trouble harvest it. By the breath of God they perish, and by the wind of his anger they come to an end. The roaring of a lion, and the voice of the fierce lion, and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the whelps of the lioness are scattered. Now a word was brought to me stealthily, and my ear received a whisper of it, amid disquieting thoughts from the visions of the night. When deep sleep falls on men, dread came upon me, and trembling, and also made the multitude of my bones shake in dread. Then a spirit swept by my face. The hair of my flesh bristled up. It stood still, but I could not recognize its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice. Can mankind be right before God? Can a man be pure before his Maker? He puts no trust even in his slaves, and against his angels he charges error. How much more those who dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed before the moth. Between morning and evening they are broken in pieces. Unobserved, they perish forever. Is their tent cord pulled up with them? They die, yet without wisdom. The discipline of the Almighty. Call now, is there anyone who will answer you? And to which of the holy ones will you turn? For vexation kills the ignorant fool, and jealousy puts to death the simple. I have seen the ignorant fool taking root, and I curse his abode suddenly. His sons are far from salvation. They are even crushed at the gate, and there is no deliverer. His harvest the hungry devour, and take it to a place of thorns, and the schemer pants after their wealth. For wickedness does not come out from the dust, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. For man is born for trouble, as sparks fly upward. But as for me, I would seek God, and I would set my cause before God, who does not great and unsearchable things, wonders without number, He gives rain on the earth, and he sends water in the fields outside, so that he sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to salvation. He frustrates the thoughts of the crafty, so that their hands cannot attain success of sound wisdom. He catches the wise by their own craftiness, and the counsel of the twisted is quickly thwarted. By day they meet with darkness, and grope at noon as in the night. But he saves from the sword of their mouth, and the needy from the hand of the strong, so the poor has hope, and unrighteousness must shut its mouth. Behold now, blessed is the man who God reproves. So do not reject the discipline of the Almighty, for he inflicts pain and gives relief. He wounds, and his hands also heal. From 6 distresses he will deliver you. Even in 7 evil will not touch you. In famine he will redeem you from death, and in war from hands with swords. You will be hidden from the scourge of the tongue, and you will not be afraid of devastation when it comes. You will laugh at devastation and starvation, and you will not be afraid of the beasts of the earth, for your covenant will be with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field will be at peace with you. You will know that your tent is at peace, for you will visit your abode and fear no loss. You will know also that your seed will be many, and your offspring as the vegetation of the land. You will come to the grave in full vigor, like the stacking of grain in its season. Behold this, we have investigated it, and so it is. Hear it, and know for yourself. Job answers Eliphaz. Then Job answered and said, Oh, that my vexation were actually weighed and laid in the balances together with my destruction, for then it would be heavier than the sand of the seas. Therefore my words have been rash, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me. Their poison my spirit drinks. The horrors of God are arranged against me. Does the wild donkey bray over his grass, or does the ox low over his fodder? Can something tasteless be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the slime of a yolk? My soul refuses to touch them. They are like a loathsome food to me. Oh, that my request might come to pass, and that God would grant my hope. Would that God were willing to crush me, that he would release his hand and cut me off. But it is still my comfort, and I rejoice in unsparing pain, that I have not at all hidden away the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait, and what is my end that I should endure? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Is it that there is no help within me, and that the success of sound wisdom is driven from me? For the despairing man, loving kindness should be from his friend, but he forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers have betrayed me like a wadi, like the torrents of wadis which pass by, which grow dark because of ice, and upon which the snow hides itself, and when they become waterless they are silent. When it is hot they vanish from their place, the paths of their course wind along, they go up into the formless place and perish. The caravans of Tema looked, the travelers of Sheba hoped for them. They were ashamed, for they had trusted. They came, there, and were humiliated. Indeed, you have now become such. You see a terror and are afraid. Have I said, give me something, or offer a bribe for me from your wealth, or give me escape from the hand of the adversary, or redeem me from the hand of the ruthless men? Instruct me, and I will be silent, and cause me to understand how I have erred. How painful are upright words! But what does your reproof prove? Do you think to reprove my words, or you think of the words of the one in despair as wind? You would even cast lots for the orphans and bargain over your friend. So now be willing to face me, and see if I lie to your face. Now turn from this, let there be no unrighteousness. Even turn from this, my righteousness is yet in it. Is there unrighteousness on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern destruction? Is not man conscripted to labor on earth? And are not his days like the days of a hired man, as a slave who pants for the shade, and as a hired man who eagerly hopes for his wages? So am I apportioned months of worthlessness, and nights of trouble are appointed me. If I lie down and say, when shall I arise? But the twilight continues, and I am saturated with tossing until dawn. My flesh is clothed with worms and a crust of dirt. My skin scabs over and flows out again. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and come to an end without hope. Remember that my life is but wind. My eye will not again see good. The eye of him who sees me will behold me no longer. Your eyes will be on me, but I will not be. A cloud vanishes and is gone. So he who goes down to Sheol does not come up. He will not return again to his house, nor will his place recognize him any more. Indeed, I will not hold back my mouth. I will speak in the distress of my spirit. I will muse on the bitterness of my soul. Am I the sea or the sea monster, that you set a guard over me? If I say, my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my bitter musing, then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me by visions, so that my soul would choose suffocation, death rather than my pains. I have rejected everything. I will not live forever. Leave me alone, for my days are but a breath. What is a man that you magnify him, and that you set your heart on him, that you examine him every morning and test him every moment? Will you never turn your gaze away from me, nor let me alone until I swallow my spit? Have I sinned? What have I done to you, O watcher of men? Why have you set me as your target, so that I am a burden to myself? Why then do you not forgive my transgression, and take away my iniquity? For now I will lie down in the dust, and you will seek me earnestly, but I will not be. Bildad claims God rewards the good. Then Bildad the Shuhite answered and said, How long will you say these things, and the words of your mouth be a mighty wind? Does God pervert justice, or does the Almighty pervert what is right? If your sons sinned against him, then he sent them to the power of their transgression. If you would seek God earnestly and plead for their grace of the Almighty, if you are pure and upright indeed now, he would rouse himself to you, and make your righteousness abode at peace. Though your beginning was insignificant, yet your end will increase greatly. Please ask of past generations and establish these things searched out by their fathers. For we are only of yesterday, and know nothing, because our days on earth are but a shadow. Will they not instruct you and tell you and bring forth words from their hearts? Can the papyrus grow up without a marsh? Can the rushes grow without water? While it's still green and not cut down, yet it dries up before any other plant. So are the paths of all who forget God, and the hope of the godless will perish, whose confidence is fragile, and who trusts a spider's web. He relies on his house, but it does not stand. He holds fast to it, but it is not established. He thrives before the sun, and his shoots go forth over his garden. His roots wrap around a rock pile. He looks upon a house of stones. If he swallows him up from his place, then it will deny him, saying, I never saw you. Behold, this is the joy of his way, and out of the dust others will spring. Behold, God will not reject a blameless man, nor will he strengthen the hand of evildoers. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter, and your lips with shouting. Those who hate you will be clothed with shame, and the tent of the wicked will be no longer. Job replies, There is no adjudicator. Then Job answered and said, In truth I know that this is so, but how can a man be in the right before God? If one desired to contend with him, he could not answer him once in 1,000 times. Wise in the heart and mighty in power, who has stiffened his neck against him, had been at peace. God is the one who removes the mountains. They know not how, when he overturns them in his anger, the one who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble, the one who says for the sun not to shine, and sets a seal upon the stars, who alone stretches out the heavens, and tramples down the waves of the sea, who makes a bear, Orion, and the Pleiades, and the chambers of the south, who does great things unsearchable and wondrous works innumerable. Were he to sweep by me, I would not see him. Were he to move past me, I would not perceive him. Were he to snatch away, who could turn him back? Who could say to him, What are you doing? God will not turn back his anger. Beneath him crouch the helpers of Rahab. How then can I answer him, and choose my words before him? For though I were right, I could not answer. I would have to plead for the grace of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I could not believe that he was giving ear to my voice. For he bruised me with a tempest, and multiplies my wounds without cause. He will not allow me to get my breath, but saturates me with bitterness. It is a matter of power. Behold, he is the mighty one. And if it is a matter of justice, who can make him testify? Though I am righteous, my mouth will condemn me. Though I am blameless, he will declare me perverse. I am blameless. I do not know my soul. I reject my life. It is all one. Therefore I say, he consumes the blameless and the wicked. If the scourge puts to death suddenly, he mocks the despair of the innocent. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? Now my days are swifter than a runner. They flee away. They do not see good. They sweep like the reed boats, like an eagle that swoops on its food. Though I say, I will forget my musing, I will forsake my sad countenance, and be cheerful. I am afraid of all my pains. I know that you will not acquit me. I am accounted wicked. Why then should I toil in vain? If I should wash myself with snow, and cleanse my hands with lye, yet you would plunge me into the pit, and my own clothes would abhor me. For he is not a man, as I am, that I may answer him, that we may go to court for judgment together. There is no adjudicator between us, who may lay his hand upon us both. Let him remove his rod from me, and let not dread of him terrify me. Then I would speak and not fear him, but I am not like that in myself.